Your colleagues, a few of them will make it through security and come in just a moment. My name is Vance Day. I serve as a senior counsel to the Deputy Attorney General, and he would like to say, Boker Tov, Manishma. He can't make it today, and the Attorney General is in 3 other events. But we really wanted to spend some time with you. Your focus in life and how you live life and how you engage culture is critical to who we are as Americans. I had the privilege of living and working in Israel for a few years. I studied archaeology there, and then I was a news reporter and news anchor for Middle East television and CBN News, and I still love to go back to Israel and tell people to come and visit and understand the culture, understand the impact. This building that you're in is a very important structure within Washington, D.C. The Attorney General was, through the Judicial Act of 1789, was just one person who worked part-time for many, many years. It wasn't until 1870 that the Department of Justice was born. Over the years, the Department of Justice was in numerous places throughout Washington, D.C., and by 1930, they were in 5 different office buildings, and so there was about $10 million that was allocated by Congress to build this building when Federal Triangle was created. Eventually, of course, they always under budget, and they had to bump it to $12 million. Can you imagine this building being built for just $12 million? This is the Great Hall, and it holds up to 400 people. We have a lot of events in here, but you'll notice around the room that it looks like a bank. There's teller slots, and sometimes people drop things like that. But you can see that literally, those were tellers so that the officials and the employees from the Department of Justice would come and cash their checks here weekly. We don't do that anymore. But we did want to welcome you, and we're grateful that you are here today to hear some things that are important to, frankly, how we function here at the Department of Justice and our mission as it relates to religious liberty. I'm going to ask Rabbi Moshe Hauer to come up and join me in a minute. Many of you know him. He joined the Orthodox Union as executive vice president back in 2020, May 1st. Am I right on that, Rabbi? So this is your 5 years here. Prior to joining the OU, Rabbi Hauer served as senior rabbi of B'nai Yaakov Shari Zion congregation in Baltimore, Maryland for 26 years. Rabbi Hauer and I had a nice conversation about the importance of prayer. And as the faith liaison to the White House, I assure you that this Department of Justice, one, believes in prayer and requires prayer as we go about our duties. Rabbi?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you for welcoming us here. I want you to know that this is not our first meeting of the day. Our first meeting was a couple of hours ago where we met for prayer. We met for our morning prayers, and we have a long tradition of that. The first and perhaps most famous biblical story of Jews advocating for their safety was when Queen Esther went into King Ahasuerus. And before she went in, she said to her fellow people, her fellow Jews, gather and pray for me for 3 days that I should be successful. So we're sort of used to praying on our own before we walk into buildings like this one. There's another less known but very important biblical story where a different Jewish representative, Nehemiah, in the 2nd chapter of Nehemiah, went into a different king. And the king looked at him and said, "You look disturbed and distraught. What's on your mind?" And the verse says, he said in his own first person, he said, "And I prayed to God, and I said to the king." And that means that right there in the presence of the power that he was speaking to, he uttered a prayer for his success. We've always done it, but we've usually had to whisper it. And it's incredibly meaningful and powerful that this morning we were asked and invited, I have the privilege to be invited, to offer a prayer for our success before we start. So we're honored, we recognize that value, and if I could ask everyone to please rise for a moment. Hanosein shuolam lachim umemshalom lanesichim. May the God of Abraham, who grants man the power to bring justice and protection to others, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, who delivers his servant David from the evil sword, who makes a way in the sea and a path through the mighty waters, bless and protect, guard and help, exalt, magnify and uplift the President, Vice President, all officials of this Department of Justice and of this land as a whole. May the Supreme King of Kings in his mercy put into their hearts and the hearts of all their counselors and officials to deal kindly with us and all Israel. In their days and in ours, may Judah be saved and Israel dwell in safety, and may the Redeemer come to Zion. Melech malchei hamlachim brachamav yitain b'libam uvelev kol yoatzeim v'sarehem la'asos tova imonu v'im kol Yisrael achenu. B'mehem u'v'yameinu tivasha Yehuda v'Yisrael yishkon levetach uvo letzion goel v'chein yehi ratzon v'nomar amen. May this be his will, and let us say amen.
Good morning. As you all know, I'm Nathan Diamond, the Executive Director here at the Orthodox Union. And before I introduce the opening speaker, I just want to, first of all, acknowledge and appreciate the presence of Rabbi Kaplun, nominated by the President to be the State Department Special Envoy to combat anti-Semitism. And I also want to express our appreciation at the Orthodox Union to two people, in addition to Vance, who were instrumental in putting this program together with us. Martin Marks of the White House Faith Office, and Rachel Jag here at the Department of Justice. And your entire team has just been fantastic. We are honored and privileged to be here today together with several senior officials who are really the tip of the spear for the intensive and aggressive fight that the administration is putting on to combat anti-Semitism. And one of the tips of that spear is the new Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Harmeet Dhillon. Harmeet has an extensive background in civil rights litigation and civil rights advocacy. I've only gotten to know her recently. We've had a couple of conversations and sat down for an intimate meeting together with Mr. Terrell just a week ago. But the one thing I want to share by way of introducing her is not so much a resume point, but that in one of the first conversations that we had, what Assistant Attorney General Dhillon stressed to me was, as much as what she and the Civil Rights Division and the Department of Justice are doing and plan to do to combat anti-Semitism and to keep American Jews safe and to enable us to enjoy our religious freedoms, is why they are doing it. And I don't want to take words out of her mouth, but it's critical from our perspective as a values-based community that the why is understood by people just as much as the what and the how. And as you are about to hear, we are blessed to have in Assistant Attorney General Dhillon and her colleagues people who understand the fundamental of the why it is necessary not only for the American Jewish community, but for American society at large, for anti-Semitism to be vigorously and forcefully combated and defeated. So without any further ado, it's my honor to turn this over to Assistant Attorney General Dhillon.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Nathan, and thank you all for being here today. It's a real honor to be invited, and this was one of the first invitations that I received as the Assistant Attorney General, and I eagerly accepted it, and I know that my colleagues in the Civil Rights Division share my passion for religious liberty, and we are putting that belief into practice every day at the DOJ. Nathan talked about the why, and I think it's important, and I'm guided every day as I go through my work. What did the founders of this great country frame for our priorities? And even before this country was founded, religious liberty was literally the cornerstone of why America exists today, and it's something that we return to every day for inspiration. Nearly 2.5 centuries ago, in 1790, our President George Washington wrote to the Toro Synagogue in Newport, Rhode Island, to offer reassurance of the most fundamental of rights, the freedom to hold and exercise one's faith. While the new nation had yet to put ink to paper on what we now know as the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights, it is crystal clear that this ideal, this vital human right and natural right to religious liberty, was a commitment that President Washington and the other founders shared in developing our country. In his letter, President Washington wrote, "It is now no more that toleration is spoken of, as if it were by the indulgence of one class of people, that another enjoy the exercise of their inherent natural rights. For happily the government of the United States, which gives bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens, in giving it on all occasions their effectual support." I find it profoundly fitting to recall these words today as we gather today to discuss our government's efforts and our community's efforts to combat the anti-Semitism that has most recently in this country reared its ugly head in America since the terrorist attack of October 7th. In his first few days of office, President Trump issued 2 executive orders to enforce our constitutional and statutory laws against the harassment, intimidation, and violence that Jewish Americans have experienced on their college campuses, in their workplaces, and on their way to their houses of worship. In his guidance, the Department of Justice is aggressively pursuing those who singled out Jews with hatred and violence in America. The DOJ has spoken to numerous victims, and I personally have as well, and heard horrific stories of students being barred from classrooms, janitors being assaulted by pro-Hamas terrorists. There have been reports of speakers denied the ability to express their opinion because of their message. Worse, on college campuses, there have even been faculty who have been siding with these agitators who not only threaten their fellow classmates, but set up protests and encampments that either force them to face harassment or even violence to get to the classes they paid for, or face the choice of refraining from going to class at all. This is unacceptable. This shocking, even criminal behavior is not being tolerated by the United States Department of Justice, and that is why President Trump and the Civil Rights Division is making eradicating anti-Semitism in America today a central focus of our work. Thank you. We are giving anti-Jewish bigotry no sanction and persecution no room to hide. To that day, on February 3rd, the DOJ announced the formation of the task force to combat anti-Semitism, setting as its first priority rooting out anti-Semitic harassment in schools and on college campuses. But that's our first priority, not our only priority. Members of this task force include the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Education, and the General Services Administration. And some of the lawyers here in this room working with me know that we speak to our colleagues, lawyers and leaders in those other branches of the executive on a daily basis to craft settlement agreements and strategies and our next steps in litigation. A highlight of what the task force is doing, and my colleague Leo Terrell will talk more about this, the task force represents an all-of-government approach to eradicating anti-Semitism. It is this administration's commitment to use the entire array of tools available to the executive branch to address the scourge of anti-Semitism experiencing a horrific resurgence in this country. We will conduct investigations wherever we have jurisdiction, bring litigation, which we've already done, file amicus briefs to support ongoing litigation where appropriate, withhold federal government funding from institutions and governments that are not consistent with the law, and explore other steps aimed at ending this discrimination. The DOJ task force intends to use U.S. attorneys' offices throughout the United States to bring hate crimes charges where appropriate in conjunction with the Civil Rights Division. The task force intends to add members from the FBI and State Department in the immediate future. The FBI will focus on hate crimes and other criminal investigations. Some of these are already underway. The State Department will be able to contribute information about foreign influence affecting and infecting campus life. In just a few moments, Leo will provide additional information about this task force and what we're doing to advance the President's directive. It's been an honor to be part of this work, and I look forward to what we will all accomplish together. Under the President and Attorney General Bondi's leadership, the Civil Rights Division of the DOJ seeks to champion equal rights for all people of faith. It's a top priority of this administration. On a personal note, I too am part of a minority faith community. I'm a Sikh, and I personally have experienced the type of discrimination that Jews are experiencing today, and my community has as well. So I feel deeply the pain that your community is going through. Preventing Jewish students from obtaining the education they paid for and blocking access to synagogues violates the Constitution and our extensive array of federal civil rights laws that my department, my division in the DOJ, is charged with enforcing. What is happening today, preventing Jewish students from obtaining the education that they are entitled to and blocking access to synagogues, violates those laws. It is punishing Jews for their exercise of their faith and for their very identities. And it sends the message that is antithetical to our nation's very founding principles. We are here to make sure the law is enforced equally and fairly in all of these situations. In conclusion, in the very same letter I read from earlier, President Washington ends with this hope, dare I say, this prayer for all of us. May the children of the stock of Abraham, who dwell in this land, continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of other inhabitants, while everyone shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid. It is my hope that these sentiments once again come to fruition in ours, the greatest country of all. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant Attorney General Dhillon. When somebody starts an introduction by saying the person needs no introduction, that's really an odd way to bring somebody up on stage, but most of you may already know Leo Terrell. He's a frequent media guest on many different outlets, but what you don't know about Leo is he has a great sense of humor, and he's passionate about civil rights. As a litigator, as a civil rights attorney in Southern California, he was passionate about his craft. I've been able to get to know Leo a little bit. It started off rough when I called him one day the good idea fairy. Not sure he really liked that, but Leo is senior counsel to the Assistant Attorney General. Leo?
Thank you. My name is Anderson Cooper from CNN. Thank you, Vance. And thank all of you for allowing me to be here and to tell you why I'm here. I'm here to combat anti-Semitism, number one. And I had the privilege to walk and shake hands with a few of you, and many of you have said, thank you for all the work you're doing. I haven't done enough. I have not done enough. And we need to do a lot more because anti-Semitism is throughout this country and is horrific. Now, in order for me and my boss, Harmeet, introduced that I'm part of the task force, I had the DOJ version of the task force. I have 4 great tools to combat anti-Semitism. First tool, I have the greatest president in my lifetime fighting against anti-Semitism. Let me tell you, without disclosing anything confidential, it is a #1 priority on his list, and he has given me the green light to do everything I can to fight anti-Semitism. You see, I've been a civil rights attorney for 30 years, And if you're not enjoying your freedom and liberty, I can't enjoy mine. Because anti-Semitism affects everyone in this country. It affects our livelihoods. So the president knows that. The second most important tool in my toolbox is we have a fantastic Attorney General, Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi has given the Civil Rights Division, has given me, since I've been here, the green light to do everything possible legally to fight anti-Semitism. And it is a privilege to work for her. The third tool in that great toolbox, my boss, Harmeet Dhillon, who heads the Civil Rights Division. This is not your 1968 Civil Rights Division. This is a Civil Rights Division that looks at what's going on right now and prioritize. And I can tell you, for those who know me here, Harmeet has made fighting anti-Semitism a #1 priority in her administration. The fourth tool in that fantastic toolbox, you. We need you. The Department of Justice is reaching out to you to help us fight anti-Semitism. I have a great chief of staff and a great group of people, and we are meeting with the stakeholders who have been victimized by this hatred and ugliness of anti-Semitism. So you are part of this team. I expect you to work just as hard as I do to fight anti-Semitism. You know what makes me upset about anti-Semitism? I've been a civil rights attorney all my life. I know the commitment of Jewish Americans fighting civil rights for every other group in this country. Jewish Americans helped found the NAACP in 1909. I know how it used to be an NAACP attorney. Jewish Americans walked the streets in the 60s to fight against segregation and against discrimination against Black Americans. You don't know how proud I am as a person of color, as an American, to be the face of this task force, to let people know this is a fight involving all of us to get rid of anti-Semitism. My goal is simple. Some of you saw me on Fox News, that Leo 2.0 character. And if you saw me talk about anti-Semitism on Fox News, I'm very consistent in my role as DOJ. In Fox, I had a media platform. Here, I have the privilege to utilize the federal government, which has a fundamental responsibility to treat everyone fair, equal, to practice what I talked about on television here. And with President Trump, Pam Bondi, my colleague and friend, Harmeet Dhillon, I get to do it. But again, with your help, with your involvement, with your commitment, because I cannot enjoy the benefits and the quality of life in this great country unless you enjoy the benefits and qualities of life in this great country. So, what are we doing? Harmeet summarized it. I can summarize it even more. Using every tool in that toolbox, litigation. And let me tell you right now, I don't trust those guys. Some people may fall in line due to litigation, filing lawsuits. Some may not need litigation. Maybe we can work out an agreement. We're looking at each individual, what I call a hater, and seeing if we can work with them. We have the tools, and we have the law, and we have what's right about this country on our side. But this is a process that is going to require everyday commitment. And here's the plan. We saw what happened prior to this administration in protecting Jewish Americans. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So our goal is to lay the foundation down now, over the next 4 years, and make sure by way of litigation, consent decrees, maybe a good handshake, that it maintains itself after 2028. See, I'm looking long range. I've been a civil rights attorney for 30 years. And in taking this job, it is a commitment to the country. No political aspirations, just a civil rights attorney who loves his country and believes everyone should enjoy the benefits of the greatest country on this planet. So I thank you. Like I said, that fourth tool in that toolbox, I expect to work with all of you and your friends and your families, and that we permanently eradicate anti-Semitism in this great country, and with the help of some of my friends, this rabbi right here, around the world as well. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you, Leo. Deputy Assistant Attorney General Michael Gates is recently the former elected city attorney to Huntington Beach for about 10 years. You may have seen him. He fought a lot of battles with Governor Newsom on some of the crackdowns that Governor Newsom wanted, cities to obey. And Michael fought for the liberty of the citizens of Huntington Beach. He's a successful trial attorney. He's managed a firm. He's got 5 children. He's been married for 30 years. I don't know how she does it. But recently, he was appointed by Harmeet Dhillon and then approved by the White House for the position of Deputy Assistant Attorney General. Michael?
Thank you, Vance. It's such an honor to be here today speaking. It's such an honor to work with an amazing team. I tell people every single day, and I even post on social media often, that America is in good hands with Harmeet Dhillon at the leadership of the Civil Rights Division. And it goes without saying that we're all honored to work for President Trump and Attorney General Bondi, but we're particularly privileged to have Harmeet's leadership. And frankly, that's the reason I came from Southern California to DC to work here and do this work, is because of Harmeet. So thank you, Harmeet, for your service. I wanted to take this opportunity today to share with you some of the tools that the Department of Justice has deployed and is using to combat anti-Semitism and to prosecute crimes, whether it's federal criminal statutes, which I'll talk a little bit about and share some examples with you, but also the fair housing laws and other federal statutes designed to prevent discrimination in land use. So just to begin with the federal criminal statutes used for combating hate crimes, the Church Arson Prevention Act is used most often for anti-Semitic hate crimes. This statute prohibits intentionally defacing, damaging, or destroying religious real property because of the religious nature of the property. The statute also prohibits anyone from intentionally obstructing or attempting to obstruct by force or by threat a person in the enjoyment of that person's religious beliefs. Finally, the statute prohibits anyone from intentionally defacing, damaging, or destroying any religious real property because of race, color, or ethnic characteristics. And I have a couple examples of cases in which these statutes are used. In United States versus Seacrest, In October of 2021, defendant set fire to the Congregation Beth Israel in Austin, Texas, and you may have heard about this. After scoping out the site for 3 days, Seacrest admitted that he targeted the synagogue because of his hatred of Jews. And journals recovered from the defendant were replete with anti-Semitic statements. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. In another case, United States versus Al-Qaeda, in December 2023, Al-Qaeda traveled to Temple Israel Synagogue in Albany, New York, walked up the front steps, took out a shotgun, and fired 2 rounds into the air, shouting, "Free Palestine." Still holding the shotgun, he then attempted to remove an Israeli flag posted outside the synagogue. Al-Qaeda's actions forced the daycare operating inside Temple Israel to go into lockdown, disrupted activities that the temple had planned for Hanukkah, and frightened the congregants. Al-Qaeda pled guilty in February of this year and is awaiting sentencing. The second most common criminal statute that we use to combat anti-Semitism is known as the Shepherd-Bird Hate Crimes Prevention Act. This statute prohibits willfully causing bodily injury or attempting to cause bodily injury with a dangerous weapon when a crime is being committed because of actual or perceived race, color, religion, national origin of any person. In a recent case using that Hate Crimes Prevention Act, in United States versus Bowers, in October of 2018, SWAT responded to the Tree of Life Synagogue, as we heard from the news, finding a man armed with an AR-15 rifle, 3 handguns, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. The congregation had just started Shabbat services. Bowers opened fire and hunted for victims throughout the building, ultimately killing 11 congregants, most of them elderly, and 2 brothers with intellectual disabilities. He also seriously injured 2 more congregants and injured 5 responding law enforcement officers. Defendant's animus against Jews in this case was clear in his social media accounts. Bowers was convicted at trial in 2023 and sentenced to death. In addition to the foregoing criminal statutes that I just mentioned, the Civil Rights Division has a long history of protecting religious freedom through the enforcement of Fair Housing Act and Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, also known as RLUIPA. The Civil Rights Division has brought numerous legal cases and filed statements of interest in matters involving the FHA and RLUIPA, violations that affect various Orthodox Jewish communities, and our prosecutions have increased since the issuance of recent presidential executive orders. In March of this year, we filed a Fair Housing Act RLUIPA statement of interest in the private lawsuit Lost Lake Holdings versus Town of Forestburg in New York, in support of claims brought by an Orthodox Jewish housing developer alleging discrimination under the Fair Housing Act and religious animus in zoning and permitting process by the town of Forestburg. In addition, while I can't get into specific details about ongoing investigations, I can share that we currently have several open RLUIPA investigations involving Orthodox Jewish communities across the country. These investigations include municipalities that have restricted building or operation of houses of worship or other religious land uses, and we are investigating cities that have made changes to zoning laws that negatively impact religious communities. In another matter, we are investigating anti-Semitic discrimination in public accommodations, including whether a restaurant, believe it or not, has engaged in a pattern of practice of religious discrimination for refusing service to Jewish patrons. We are also ensuring compliance with prior settlements the DOJ has obtained, including a settlement involving the village of Airmont in New York. The basis of the Department of Justice action against Airmont was the city had revised its zoning code in 2018 to discriminate against Orthodox Jewish residents, again, believe it or not, to make it more difficult for them to worship in their homes. The settlement requires the village to make important reforms to its zoning code that will enable the Orthodox Jewish residents to practice their religion in their homes. Since 1991, this is the third lawsuit brought by the United States against Airmont for discriminating against the Orthodox Jewish community, underscoring the importance of ensuring that relief we have obtained is fully implemented. This is just a brief summary of the tools that we have available. There are others that we have been deploying, and our record shows that we have been very effective. I want to thank you for your attention today, and thanks again, in particular, to our new Assistant Attorney General of our Civil Rights Division for her strong leadership in this effort. Thank you very much.
So Leo spoke about the 4 tools, the 4th being you. This is your opportunity to spend some time with us and perhaps ask some questions. There's a microphone right here in the middle. What we'd like you to do is step up to the microphone, and if you want to form a line after the first speaker, that's appropriate. We're going to spend about 10-15 minutes answering questions. You can direct your question. If I don't like the direction of the question, I'll just change it. Please, if you would, ask a question. Don't give a speech like I would, because we want to get as many questions in as we can. So if you have a question, please step to the mic and ask your question.
Hi, thanks. I'll be first. My name is Nava Greenfield. Thank you so much for everything you do and for having us here. My question is that there are a number of ways that anti-Semitism has surfaced and expressed in the country in recent years. In your opinion, what is the most challenging or concerning of those different ways that anti-Semitism has surfaced?
What is the most challenging? Harmeet?
Well, thank you for the question. To me, I describe it as every day a game of whack-a-mole. What's challenging is the proliferation. Not just, I actually, stepping back a little bit, I lived in the Bronx as a small child. I lived on the campus of Yeshiva University. Actually, my dad was doing his medical residency there, and there were a lot of people of the Orthodox faith in my neighborhood. I went to an Orthodox preschool. You would think, okay, maybe there are hotbeds of that in places where we have high urban populations, but in fact, this is a pervasive problem, and social media, I think, has accelerated hatred and enabled it in places where I didn't see it when I was younger. So I think that is the problem. And so it is really up to all of us to deputize our friends and law enforcement throughout the United States and just, even socially, stand up and condemn it. And so that leadership from the president is very helpful in that regard, but it requires all of us to pick up the baton and run with it. So I think that's the challenge, is it's more pervasive than I thought it was.
Let me give you, I agree with everything Harmeet said, but let me give you another perspective that I find, again, offensive. Everything about anti-Semitism is offensive. It's being sanctioned by institutions. I mean, you look at, and I don't want to play politics, you look at some of these media outlets, they justify it. You look at some of these institutions, they justify it by allowing it to happen. I've never seen it as wicked in my entire lifetime. I've been on this earth for a long time. But what's even more appalling is the idea that someone can go to a campus, engage in anti-Semitic behavior, or a Jewish individual can walk down the street and be harassed. The individual might get arrested, but if they do get arrested, they get released the next day, which says, go back and do it again. Where are the prosecutions over the last 4 or 5 years on hate crimes, on affecting Jewish Americans? So this is crazy. The Department of Justice not only has to fight against anti-Semitic behavior, but we have to look at these institutions that basically are allowing it to occur.
Our criminal chief isn't here today, criminal chief of the Civil Rights Division, because I've got him busy chasing down every time a prosecutor dismisses hate crime charges that have been brought. This happened 2 days ago in Michigan. The Attorney General of Michigan dismissed hate crimes charges against 7 Hamas violent activists, and she even admitted that probably would have been able to get a conviction, but it wouldn't make a difference, or whatever excuse there was. And so Department of Justice isn't just viewing that as a news item. We are seeing if it is possible for us to bring charges ourselves, and the different standards in federal and state law. But what I see is conspiracies happening, and I see the foreign funding of this work. So we're working closely with our FBI and even national security on these issues.
Next question. State your name, please.
Hello, my name is Lee Silver. Thank you very much again for taking time with us today. My question revolves around where we see scenarios where they're classified as peaceful protests. As an example, in Los Angeles last year, a group of folks formed a line outside of a shul in the Pico Robertson area, and in essence blocked folks from being able to go into the shul. Tens of them, maybe even up to 100. But it was considered, quote, a peaceful protest. If they were standing within 4 feet, intimidating folks from going in, coming out. I think there may have been a Israeli real estate fair going on as well. And so it's a two-part question. Question number one is, what is the line at which peaceful protest is allowed versus there are intimidating type of activities going on with that, quote, peaceful protest? And what can a citizen do, and what can we do when we see either things like that or we see other incidences? How should we approach bringing those up to attention to be addressed?
So,
Let me first take a stab at that. Michael might talk about some of the federal laws that apply, but the challenge, you pose a very interesting challenge, and many of us are also committed to the First Amendment. I am a First Amendment lawyer. I have stood up in court to defend the rights of people I vehemently disagree with, and I think that's part of our American way. I think, and I addressed this question on Congress last week. I met with the Congressional Jewish Caucus, and actually it was Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz who asked me that very same question. And so what the Civil Rights Division is doing is putting together a fact sheet that will make it, call it free speech for dummies for college campuses, a handout that will show the most obvious examples of what is and what isn't. When your speech crosses the line into preventing another person from enjoying their speech and their beliefs and their even free movement, that is crossing the line. When your speech verges over into intimidation that a reasonable person, not an eggshell plaintiff, but a reasonable person would find to be threatening, that crosses the line. And so we'll be putting out a fact sheet that helps with that. But we have federal statutes that prevent people from barring access to houses of worship. So that's a very clear example. And I haven't seen prosecutions like this on college campuses, but there are houses of worship for Jewish students and places of worship, if not houses of worship, on college campuses. So FACE Act prosecutions could be brought for those, and other types of hate crimes prosecutions could be brought. So we're going to make that line clear. However, what I said to the Congresswoman when she asked me that question is, there are so many examples that are being unprosecuted, we're not even close to the line. And so we're going to start doing that, and courts will tell us when we've crossed over, but I'm going to be very aggressive.
Yeah, thank you, Harmeet. And I've done quite a bit of First Amendment enforcement at the local level as well when I was city attorney of Huntington Beach. And I was actually called out to sites, to locations where there were protests, where there was exercise of speech and it was causing problems. Too often, especially at the local level, whether it's county or city, local officials justify abusive behavior and they justify criminal behavior because it's free speech. And that's just not simply what the First Amendment provides for, and that's simply not supported by case law. As a very, very general rule of thumb, even private locations, if they're open to the public, get what we call public forum treatment instead of private. Even private property can get public First Amendment free speech treatment under the rules. And people are allowed to protest. They're allowed to picket. But what they can't do is, as Harmeet said, interfere with other non-protesting folks' ability to walk in and out of businesses or in across the campus. They can't physically impede the flow of pedestrian traffic. They can't intimidate. Those things do cross the line, and if you see that and you hear it and you learn of it, you should be reporting it. Local officials may not want to take a report on that, but you should demand that they do, because protesting First Amendment exercise is totally welcome. We embrace it in America. But it can't cross over into intimidation. It can't cross over into impeding other people's flow of traffic, pedestrian traffic, whatever, ingress and egress into campuses or into businesses. It simply cannot. And once it does, and obviously we've seen worse situations where they try to claim it's a protest and they're trying to break into facilities. That's even more egregious. But all of these things are illicit, they're illegal, and they should be reported. So those should demand police reports be filed on those. But protests are supposed to be more or less kept to themselves. They can speak, but they can't do those other things: intimidation, impeding flow of traffic, those things like that, barricading. Not all of those are crimes. That's not free speech.
Leo?
Briefly, one quick example, because you mentioned Los Angeles. There's a law school that I graduated from. I don't want to tell you. UCLA. Do you see what happened there? Where students were blocked from going to their classes. There's your classic example right there. They were blocked for days from going to their classes. UCLA should be ashamed of itself. But if you saw what happened there, those are violations.
The DOJ is engaged with just about every lawyer in the country that is filing these lawsuits. To my surprise, the prior administration did not file things or get involved in most of those cases. We are. We've had several meetings with the top lawyers in the country, and we're having conversations about a more active involvement by the DOJ in existing cases, as well as bringing our own criminal cases.
We'll take 4 more questions.
Hi, my name is Hannah Shields from Teaneck, New Jersey. We're in the aftermath of October 7th, together with my colleague, founded the Bergen County Jewish Action Committee in response to all the anti-Semitic hate that we were being faced with. First of all, I want to thank you for all you're doing to combat anti-Semitism, and especially on college campuses. I see you're doing so much. What we see on the grassroots level is that it's not just a problem on college campuses. There is an actual grassroots effort of hate being led in all of the Board of Eds around the country, where it starts in the kindergartens. Children are being indoctrinated at a very young age. People with, who win an election by 50 votes or 100 votes are given a tremendous amount of power to lead Board of Eds and to, influence policy in these local levels, but they have a tremendous amount of influence with that. What can be done? These schools are receiving federal and state funding as well. What can be done on a global level to combat these local anti-Semitic grassroots efforts?
How do we combat that? We'll take 1 off the panel, not 2, please.
Yeah, so one tip is run for office. Control those boards
we're working on
yourselves.
that.
So there's no shortcut for actually that grassroots level activism. Number 2, document what you're seeing and flag it for us. Flag it for us at the Department of Justice. As you've all seen in the press, even 2 days ago with the letter that I saw the drafts of and we saw the drafts of to Harvard, telling Harvard in no uncertain terms that the money is cut off for people who do what they do. This can happen at the local level too, and it's amazing the amount of federal funding that flows and trickles down. We have processes for that. It doesn't happen instantly, but we need to so document. Be patient. Please understand we are dealing with a huge volume of complaints and trying to sequence them. As a civil rights lawyer, every civil rights lawyer up here on the stage knows that there's a concept called impact litigation. So what we try to do is pick the worst cases and make an example of them, and hopefully that has a chilling effect on others. We can't bring every prosecution. There's just simply insufficient resources in courts to do that, but what we can do is be very aggressive. So thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you.
Hi there, my name's Andrew Bernard. I'm a reporter with Jewish News Syndicate. Mr. Terrell, you mentioned consent decrees. With the reporting that you're seeking a consent decree against Columbia University, I think there's some questions about what sort of terms you're looking for and whether that is something that you're specifically doing at Columbia because they're not sort of cooperating, or if there are plans to apply those or seek those consent decrees more widely.
Let me, There's current negotiations on the consent decree, so it's hard for me to discuss publicly what's going on that. I can just tell you that allegedly Colombia has been willing to participate in trying to resolve all the issues. There has been a back and forth of terms and conditions, but I can simply tell you in vague terms that that is an ongoing process. Nothing more, nothing less at this point. If it turns out to be a consent decree, I can tell you right now, it will be one that will address all the issues that has occurred at Columbia since October 7th. But that's as much as we can talk about right now on that.
Do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah. Is there, with the efforts to shut down the Department of Education, is the plan to fold the Office of Civil Rights, the Department of Education, into the Department of Justice, and is that ongoing?
Address that. So the answer, I got that question on the Hill as well. And the functions of OCR at Department of Ed will certainly continue. And so the exact mechanics of how it's going to be folded into DOJ, but I've been asked to take that on, and we welcome that obligation with open arms. So do not be concerned that that important law enforcement function is going to go away. It may be handled more efficiently in the future.
Thank you.
Next question.
Good morning. My name is Dan Oppenheimer from the Free State of Florida. Thank you for everything that you do for all of us. Want to tell AG Bondi that we miss her back home, but we're very proud of what she's doing over here. Mr. Terrell, you mentioned that we're tool number 4, us as the members of the public. So I wanted to ask in terms of more concrete terms. I know you mentioned it briefly, but in terms of is it liaisoning with our local government? Is it working directly with the DOJ? But what concrete steps can we do at home that can really affect some change and help you with your mission?
Thank you very much for that question. And again, this all comes from the fact that we have the president who's made this a focus, Pam Bondi, and my boss, Harmeet, focusing on anti-Semitism as the #1 priority. Personally, maybe Florida, setting aside Florida, I don't trust some of these local officials to report it to us. If I'm asking you, like I spoke to you, tell us, contact us, our website. Let us be aware of it. I'm not saying not to report it locally, but if you want some action on it, this administration, this federal administration, and I gave you my card, my chief of staff, we're going to jump on it. I'm going to tell you a secret that she'll probably get mad at me. This woman never sleeps, okay? She texts messages at 1, 2 a.m. When something is upsetting her, when it involves civil rights, guess what? We're going to get that call. And as I said to you before, this is a 24/7 commitment. We can't do enough. You cannot do enough. So report it locally, but tell us.
So we do have a hotline where people can report things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Question?
My name is Adam Kolodkin. So in the wake of October 7th, when Hamas carried out the deadliest anti-Semitic massacre since the Holocaust, we witnessed a historic and terrifying surge in anti-Semitism, particularly among young Americans. This surge is not organic. It has been fueled, normalized, and amplified by powerful online influencers who glorify terrorism and dehumanize Jews for profit. At the center of this dangerous pipeline is a man named Hassan Piker. So my question is this: how is it acceptable that Hassan Piker, one of the most influential political streamers in America with over 5 million followers across Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter, is allowed to use Amazon-owned Twitch, Google-owned YouTube, and Meta-owned Instagram to glorify terrorism? Some examples of this glorifying terrorism and anti-Semitism include showing Hamas propaganda and calling it epic, posting and glamorizing a Houthi terrorist spokesperson while his audience nicknamed him Timothy Chalamet, making veiled death threats towards Senator Tom Cotton by posting the weapon used to assassinate Shinzo Abe, and inciting targeted harassment campaigns against Jewish creators like Ethan Klein, whose wife was in the IDF and they're now American citizens, that included doxing, child CPS calls, and sending decayed bones to his house, all while earning over $15 million a year, reaching 45,000 live viewers per stream every single day. Since October 7th, Hassan has generated 470 million YouTube views since, when this ecosystem has clearly contributed to the radicalization of American youth and a measurable spike of anti-Semitism, yet there has been no meaningful oversight, no platform accountability, and no investigation from any government agency with protecting the public from extremist
So what's your
influence.
question?
My question is,
That sounds like a question I'd ask.
my question
Go
is,
ahead.
how can we be protected against these people online that profit off dehumanizing Jews? And I do believe, as someone that just graduated college, and I saw the stuff on campus myself, that this is a huge issue because of this, these online radicals that are being funded.
It is a huge issue. You are correct, and it has to be addressed.
First of all, I sued Google many years ago for their discrimination, and so I've been boycotting Google products for many years. I admit that. I have to get back on a little bit because some of our government offices use them, but I don't watch YouTube, so I'm not familiar with that, so shame on me for not knowing about that. But you described some aspects of this person's behavior that are speech, that are protected speech under the United States Constitution, and others that are not. Stalking, sending threatening things and items to people's homes that put them in reasonable fear, that's a crime in the jurisdiction in which it occurred. And so it is surprising to me that that hasn't been prosecuted as such. I have gone to court and helped people get restraining orders against much less concerning behavior than that. And so that should be handled by local law enforcement. So we'll take a look at that and see. But the power of the pocket is also very powerful to the extent that there are companies enabling profit making off of hatred like this. People should buy their one share and go to the meetings of these companies and say their piece over there. That's democracy in action as well. And so I think we have to take a holistic approach to these types of things. And finally, I would say there's not enough shame in our society, okay? I think we should all feel comfortable shaming people who engage in that behavior, call it out, encourage our friends to call it out, and make it uncomfortable for those people to behave the way that they do. But I hear some crimes there, so we're going to look at that.
Thank you, Harmeet. Thank you for the question, all the questions.